Hello and welcome to another enlightening session of ABLF Talks, where once again we will be talking about rethinking globalization, once again in the light of the COVID-19 pandemic. My name is Priyanka Sharma Pawa. I'm a news anchor with Beyond World is One, India's only truly global news channel. And my esteemed guest on this session is Namal Rajapaksa, the Minister of Youth Affairs and Sports of Sri Lanka. He is also the State Minister for Digital Technology and Enterprise Development. Mr. Rajapaksa, thank you so much for joining us on this session. Now, we hope that through this session, we'll together be able to tackle some of the most pressing issues confronting the youth of Sri Lanka and across the world, given your expertise, especially during the pandemic. So my first question to you, Mr. Rajapaksa, with youth unemployment on the rise as of now, what are your plans to create more job opportunities and attract more investment into the country?
Well, Priyanka, I think the youth unemployment with the pandemic is a challenge. As you know, the global unemployment rate is growing rapidly due to the pandemic, and the Sri Lankans have to face the same consequences. And it's not a domestic or a local crisis that we are facing, and we are in a global pandemic. So we believe, firstly, the global leaders has to work together to come out of a concrete solution, not only about vaccination or on the medical front, but also how are we going to face the post-pandemic challenges that the world is going to face as a whole. But at the same time, from the Sri Lankan point of view, as you know, we have been going on a very rapid pace for the vaccination program, and we have almost vaccinated 70% of the population who are above 30 years of age. And we have also identified certain targeted groups that bring more foreign revenue and create employment in Sri Lanka, such as apparel industry, IT industry, and other sectors. So we believe we need to be very much focused on strengthening the SME sector during these kind of pandemics, because as you know, the world supply chain is getting more tougher. The transportation between states, if it's India or in Sri Lanka, between provinces is getting tougher. So we believe helping the local entrepreneurs and creating more entrepreneurial youngsters that will not only create employment, but also we will have an ecosystem that can survive among us. But at the same time, while promoting entrepreneurship, we are also looking at the startup industry from tech to non-tech, and also technological research to be established, to be done in Sri Lanka. So we are rapidly and very aggressively pushing for new tech startups. And also we are looking at partnering them with a lot of government projects, as the government is on the verge of digitalization, going into digitalization with the modern technology. So these kind of initiatives will create more employment, but at the same time, we believe this will create more entrepreneurship. But I have to agree that with the COVID-19 pandemic, with the travel restrictions, the tourism industry has suffered badly. And we have around 3 million people surviving from tourism, which are directly affected due to the pandemic. About close to $5 billion of foreign revenue we have lost during this pandemic, during the period of this pandemic. So we have to rethink about tourism. So we have actually, in discussion with the tourism ministry, the youth ministry, to open up borders for certain segments, such as sport. Of course, the Indian tour was in Sri Lanka recently. So now we are looking at the next season or next tours to be, if we can open the gates for the public, also for a tourism bubble or the travel bubble to be established between two countries. We are playing for the spectators to come in, and also for destination weddings, we are looking at opening up even in India. So we are looking at a holistic approach, but on a very micro level, where we can create more entrepreneurs in the country that can support the other industries. But yes, we are working on big investments as well. As you know, yesterday we signed up a $60 million agreement with a Maldivian company to establish a yacht manufacturing plant, which will definitely create around 500 to 600 direct employment. And also we are in verge of signing 2 steel manufacturing plants, one of course with the 2 local investors with the foreign partners. So we are looking at bigger investment, but at the same time, we are promoting more entrepreneurial and tech and non-tech startups to create entrepreneurship in the country.
Right, absolutely. I think you mentioned 2 very interesting points over there: technology, investment in technology, especially if you want to empower the youth and startups, and also tourism. not just Sri Lanka and other Asian countries, but the world where tourism has suffered. And countries will definitely need to focus on that sector to recover from the pandemic. But let's talk about sports now. We know that the Tokyo Games have just wrapped up, lots of headlines there, a first of its kind Olympics without any spectators. What was the objective behind the massive investment decision to ensure Sri Lanka's effective representation at the Olympics?
Well, I mean, see, Olympic is where we all showcase our talent, and every athlete has a dream to go to Olympics. And it's not easy to get into Olympics. You know, there has to be some sort of extraordinary talent for each and every individual athlete globally who is representing their country or their organization representing their country to Olympics. So Sri Lanka, of course, we have had a mixed reaction from the athletes, or mixed kind of achievements when it comes to Olympic. We managed to win 2 medals in our history. One is Duncan White, of course, long years ago, then Susantika Jayasinha in the recent history. And the biggest challenge I had was to make sure that maximum number of participation to secure for Olympics. So I must say we had a very short period of time when I took over office, and we managed to get 9 athletes, and out of 9, we had 3 qualified athletes from their merits. And of course, with wildcards and rest, we went up to 9. And out of 9, we had 5 female participation, so which is something that we are proud of as a nation, as a country, where we have produced a world first female prime minister in Sri Lanka, and also our former Olympic medalist is she is an Olympian, and she is representing she is into the same sector. So this is the challenge I had. So what I did was actually shifting from infrastructure to human capital development, because we have been heavily investing on infrastructure, which is good, but the problem is it the need of the time? So we decided we had to shift from that to more human capital development. So in the coming 10 years, we have done a blueprint, and we have identified certain sports, and we are looking at investing at least 35% of my sports and youth ministry budget on human capital development, simply because we believe Olympic is a place where Sri Lanka can showcase the talent that we have, and also be a part of the global Olympian family, and also at the same time to encourage more youngsters, you know, to go to the global platform. Like India, for the first time in the history, has managed to win a gold medal in the javelin event, so which is a great thing for the South Asian nations, and it is actually an eye opener for all of us, you know, to shift from our traditional sports into other sports and try to do well in the global platform. So this is what we are looking at, and we'll keep on investing on the younger generation, not only in Olympics but also all other sports such as football, cricket, rugby, and kabaddi, you know, all kind of sports, not only the Olympic sports, but looking at global achievements, you know. So in a way, we will be able to take Sri Lanka to the global platform.
Right, Mr. Rajapaksa, now I'd like to talk about something that you connect with strongly, that is the youth of Sri Lanka. Now, what are some of the exciting opportunities underway for Sri Lanka's youth at the upcoming Expo 2020 in Dubai?
I mean, see, Expo 2020 is also, we must thank the UAE government for hosting it, and also during the pandemic, it's similar to Olympics. You know, Olympic had to go through a lot of challenges, and the Japanese Olympic government did extremely well, and it's a brave decision as a government. So same vice versa, UAE government has decided to go ahead with the Expo 2020, and I believe that's a great platform for Sri Lanka to showcase what we have and what we can offer to the global market, especially when it comes to the entrepreneurial sector, the manufacturing sector, the apparel sector in our country, the gem and jewelry sector, spices or commodities, and also a place where our technological industry in technology division can go and showcase what Sri Lankan technology is capable of. So we believe we are hoping to be an active partner of Expo 2020, and I'm hoping to visit the site somewhere around towards the end of the year to see how the Sri Lankan corn is being done. So we are very serious, and we want to take the maximum opportunity, because we believe this is where the world comes together, and we have a great platform to showcase ourselves. And our government, our President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, are very keen on giving a youth-led entrepreneurial program in this country and youth-led economy in this country. So this is where we believe Expo will be a great platform for all of us.
Of Of course, just expanding from what you just said, the youth undeniably is the future, and investment in equal opportunities for all is the only way for us all to recover from this pandemic. So what can other Asian countries learn from your ministry when it comes to helping the younger generation recover from the pandemic and its after effects?
Yeah, I mean, see, one thing that we have done well, I would say, our president and our Gotabaya Rajapaksa, honorable president, and the government, is that the public participation, especially youth. And if you look at the vaccination program, the first thing the health authorities in Sri Lanka asked was for vaccination. So we managed to work with our friends. We managed to talk to India and get some of the vaccines. And the China came in, the Russians came in and gave us vaccines. Then the WHO was very kind enough. Japan was kind enough to provide us with vaccination. But then the challenge was whether the health sector itself is good enough or enough. I wouldn't say they're good enough, they're good enough, but whether that it is enough to make it a very fast, progressive vaccination program. Then we got the military involved, getting Triforces, medical staff to help and assist the health sector to carry on the vaccination program. But then the challenge we had with some sort of adverse publicity that was going globally to get people to come to the vaccination centers and get vaccinated. So then we used the government mechanism with the government officers from each village and the youth of the village to actively participating on promoting elders to come to the vaccination center and get vaccinated. So that went really well, and it actually we managed to get most of the people to come and get vaccinated. But at the same time, we found out certain elderly people who are unable to come. So we got youth to get involved with that, get the medical staff to those people's residence and get them vaccinated at their residence. So that is one way of youth participation during the pandemic. But on the other hand, we drive this massive campaign called 10,000 beds to be donated to the health sector within 10 days. So I must say we managed to do 18,000 beds within that 10 days to be handed over to the health sector. And that has become very useful at this stage with the current situation in the country. So with the pandemic, what we believe is that active youth participation is way forward. When I say active youth participation, I'm not only meaning of giving assistance to the vaccination program or to the other health sectors to carry out COVID-19 treatment centers. No, but active participation is something that we as the younger generation taking forward the guidelines that has been given by the health authorities. Social distancing, face mask, wear your face mask, keep yourself clean, sanitizer. So this is something that youth can be a role model. Every single person in this country, even in South Asia, even in the global platform. So if we as the younger generation take those precautions and promote our elders to adapt to that, that will be, that is what we can do, and that is what Sri Lankan youth have been doing the last couple of months, I would say. And also this is what we want to promote to the next generation as well. And at the same time, as we all know, pandemic has forced us to get into technology. So this is where the youngsters played a major role, getting the computers on or their mobile phones or smartphones and then connecting to Zoom or other technological platforms, Microsoft Teams or any other platforms, starting to do their school curriculum through digital platforming and get this work done. So through the digital ministry, we have already started the government network to be digitalized. So the easiest way for me to get it done is to get the children involved. So they will encourage their parents to use digital platforms more than going in physically into departments. So this is something that we have started doing, and hopefully within the next couple of months we will expedite it.
Right. Now, Mr. Rajapaksa, we obviously have people tuning in from across the world and enjoying the insights that you're providing in this session. Before I take in some questions, I'd like to ask you a slightly personal question. As one of the younger ministers in the current cabinet of Sri Lanka, what have been some of the biggest challenges that you have faced?
Well, see, I mean, it's always tough, to be young and take responsibility, but it's a challenge as well. I mean, it's good to take challenges and responsibility at younger age. So one thing is to prove myself, the age is not the barrier here. It's just that you need to be focused and work with your seniors to carry out the policies that have been laid forward by your leadership. So this is what we have been doing, and also introducing innovation to the system, and then get the traditional mechanism to get adapt to the modern innovation and modern thinking that we are trying to bring into the system. So especially when it comes to sports, try to have a professional background, create a professional setup for training, coaching, and participating in events. So we have been very clear on our policy. We are looking at discipline, training, and performance. So if you're disciplined, if you're trained, if you perform well, then our system will support you. Same thing goes to the youth sector. If you're disciplined, you learn, you implement, then we are there to support. That kind of thinking, the corporate thinking to come into the traditional government sector was the biggest challenge we had. But I must say we have adapted very well, and long way to go. I do have to agree on that, but we are getting there.
Right, now let's take in some questions from the audience. One particular question that's coming in for you, sir, is that what are the biggest lessons that South Asian nations can learn from the recently concluded Olympics?
Well, see, I would say training. Because I think South Asian countries, and India has done it really well, I must say. But training is key. You have to train like a champion to win medals. So I think South Asian countries have to think out of the box and move out of traditional sports that we think we are good at, but also take up the challenges that the Western world has already taken it up. And Asian countries are doing tremendously well when it comes to that. So I'm sure the South Asians can do that. And also, it shows that we have to have some sort of mechanism to work between our countries to have high-level competition. Because if you look at the European League, is very competitive and easy to travel. Easily they find IAAF approved events or FIFA approved events or IRB approved events. But when it comes to South Asia, it is difficult for athletes to get into a location to location to find events. So which actually has set us up backwards when it comes to selection criteria for the Olympic or Asian Games. But other continentals actually work really closely. Africa, US, European Union, Asian countries who are big enough to have their own infrastructure. Then we have the Southern and Northern Hemisphere working together. So I think if the South Asian leadership can work together on creating more opportunities for athletes on a very high level competition, cricket is a good example. We have India themselves with IPL have shown it, and now Bangladesh has their own Premier League. Sri Lanka has LPL with us. Pakistan has its own Premier League. Afghanistan has their own league. So in cricket, we have shown that working hand in hand, creating more competition has given us wins, given us merits when it comes to the South Asian countries. So vice versa, if we put the same implementation into track and field and other Olympic events, I'm sure by 2032, South Asian countries will win more medals.
Right now, since you mentioned sport, and I'm sure you'd agree with me that sport is a great equalizer. It brings people together from different walks of life. So what should one do to inculcate a love for sport, a passion for sport from a younger age so that, we can win more medals for our countries?
Well, just enjoy, be yourself, play around, go to the grounds, play with your family, play with your siblings, just be active. If you're an active kid, naturally you will adapt your sport. You don't have to stick to one sport. That is one mistake we South Asians do, at least Sri Lankans do most of the time. We adapt to a sport and we think that is our life. There is no way out for us. But if you look at the world athletes, we have rugby players who have become Olympians. We have Olympians who became rugby players. We have tennis players like Kumar Sangakkara, for example. He started his career with tennis and badminton and ended up playing cricket on the highest level in the world. So we do not have to stick to a particular sport. But I think if we have an active lifestyle at a very younger age, be yourself, like our grandparents, they used to run around the paddy fields, they used to live with the environment. So unfortunately, with the current educational system in our part of the world, has restricted more people, more youngsters be more active, proactive, but in return, they have been stuck in classrooms studying for books. It's just that you spend 8 or 10 hours a day studying and only half an hour working out, and you expect to win a gold medal in Olympics, which is not. This is not easy at all, is not practical at all. But be active. This is my message to all the parents. Give your children the freedom to be active. Don't restrict them from being active. Being active is not running 100 meters, not playing cricket. Just do whatever you like. Be with the environment. Cook. If you don't want to do any sports, start cooking. Start cleaning your room, cleaning your house. Be active. An active kid will naturally become an athlete or Olympian gradually if you put them on the proper system.
Now we have another interesting question coming in from the audience, and this one is about the tourism sector that you mentioned. Now, tourism happens to be, of course, a very critical pillar of the Sri Lankan economy. Sri Lanka is a very tourist destination globally. So what are your plans to revive tourism in the country to pre-pandemic levels, if you will?
Well, I mean, we are looking at a bubble tourism to start with. So already we have opened our borders for most of the countries. Of course, for fully vaccinated tourists can easily travel to Sri Lanka with just a one-day PCR, and they can move around the country as they wish. But at the same time, we are looking at increasing the numbers. So we are working with governments to have certain understanding with those governments to open up borders, particular for those residents or citizens in those countries. And also, as I said, destination weddings, sport events on a travel bubble is something that we are going to promote aggressively in a couple of months' time. And we are already in talks with the Afghanistan cricket team to host them in Sri Lanka as their hosting nation, to be part of the Sri Lankan infrastructure for their cricket. So in that way, we will get more people traveling into the country through the bubble. So we are looking at on a very open-minded way, and of course we have to be more innovative, and we have to tie up with our regional partners to increase our tourist arrivals, such as Maldives is doing tremendously well. So we have to learn from them. Of course, the island is much more easy for them to work on a bubble or isolation, but yet we can work together. We can learn from each other. This is something we are looking at doing in the future. So it's all about evolving. If Corona can evolve and come up with a new variation, I'm sure humans are much more advanced than that. So it's time for us to think different and evolve and adapt to the system.
Right. Now let's talk about the role of technology. You mentioned startups and entrepreneurship. How can the promotion of a digital economy, according to you, benefit globalization efforts?
Well, I mean, see, the digital economy is something that is growing rapidly. I mean, if you look at the first quarter of the first wave of COVID-19, digital economy became much more bigger than the oil trading in the world market, and most of the companies started booming. So this is the future end of the day as it is now, and this is something that we all can contribute irrespective of the population density or the economical background of a country. For example, Estonia, with 1.2 million population, they are about 8 to 10 unicorns in that country. And if you look at India, is looking at the 3 trillion economy on their tech startup, so which is a huge industry. And if you look at UAE and Abu Dhabi, the Middle Eastern sector is also looking at heavily to invest on infrastructure based on technology. So this is where I think countries like Sri Lanka can massively benefit with our knowledge-based economy. So we do have a robust youth labor market in our country, and we are promoting that more into technology and innovation. So technology and innovation will create new ways of economies in our country. So in that way, we will be able to create and contribute to the global economy as well, especially when it comes to maritime and aviation industry.
Right. Now, before we wrap up, let's do some crystal ball gazing, if you will. What is your vision for the nation's youth, especially when it comes to economic development for Sri Lanka?
I mean, economic development is key for a country for prosperity and growth, and we need to create employment. To create employment, we have to have economic growth. So we believe creating more entrepreneurs within the society, get youngsters the technology know-how, give them vocational training and technical training, make them employable in the global market, not only in Sri Lanka, but look at the global market. And also support more tech and non-tech startups to become entrepreneurs. So in that way, we will create an ecosystem among ourselves. Then later on, we can look at expanding that to the global market.
Right. Now, somebody wants to know from the audience, and this is a very important question, I think, I'm sure you'll agree. How can youngsters be more involved in policy making? Is there a tendency among the youth in Sri Lanka to prefer the private sector over the government sector when it comes to jobs?
Well, unfortunately, Sri Lanka, I wouldn't say but unfortunately, Sri Lankan labor market is more concentrating on getting into the government sector, but for all the wrong reasons. I mean, it's not to create policies, but just for employability. But yes, we do have a mechanism to get youngsters engaged in our policy making, especially in my youth ministry. We have a youth parliament, very active youth parliament, I would say. Then we have another mechanism called Yavana Samaja Balamandala, a network of youth organizations to working on policy making. And youth parliament is very proactive and very robust and very much involved in policy making when it comes to my ministry. So likewise, we are believing in crowdsourcing. Even when we make our budget, we make sure that we go and to each and every district to meet the younger generation and also the seniors, government officials, get their ideas, get their views as to how the budget should be for 2022. Based on that, we create a budget proposal. So in that way, youth are more engaged in policy making when it comes to the youth ministry. So eventually that will encourage them to get into a proper system where they can be part of a bigger policy making process.
Right. Now, right before we wrap up our discussion, I'd like, of course, to get some closing remarks or thoughts from you. You mentioned entrepreneurship being a key pillar of strength behind an economy which is recovering from a crisis like the pandemic. Do you have any strategies in mind to encourage young entrepreneurs in the country and perhaps in the world?
Yeah. See, entrepreneurship is all about taking a risk and be innovative, thinking out of the box. You might hear a lot of stories. You might hear, this is not going to work for you. This is something difficult to do. Who is going to support you? But youth is that. Youth has to take challenges. We always like in our smaller days, we like to do what we ask not to do. So you put that energy into your entrepreneurial mindset and get in and do what you like doing. We go out there, try out new businesses, make partnership, create network, be a member of the global network. Be partnered, be open-minded, willingness of working together with your stakeholders will create the opportunity for you to grow in a respective industry. So this is something I believe the Sri Lankan youth has to do. This is something I think the global youth has to do. As you said earlier, the globalization was a question 20 years ago, but today it's irrelevant. Globalization is not going to happen. It's already has happened. And no one can stop that. Even though you see countries put restrictions on social media, you see certain organizations are trying to block social media, but eventually still people are connected. So globalization has already happened. It's just that how are we going to use globalization for our benefit? So opportunity is there. The market is there. It's all about working together with our local and global partners. And as governments, we are very keen and we will support the entrepreneurs to grow to the next stage.
Very well said, Mr. Rajapaksa. That's definitely going to stay with me, that globalization is not waiting to happen. It's actually happening all around us. We are in a connected world as of now, be it because of the pandemic or before it even. And with that, it's a wrap on another insightful discussion of ABLF Talks. Thank you, Mr. Rajapaksa, for giving us your thoughts. Very critical part of economic recovery in a pandemic, and that is investing in our future, that is in our youth. Thank you to everyone who tuned into this session. It's been a true pleasure.